One of the most versatile nodes that you will find inside of your n8n instance is the HTTP request node. This incredibly versatile node will allow you to post out information to APIs or connections to other services that you use online. And it's particularly useful if n8n doesn't have a pre-built node for your connection, or the pre-built node doesn't quite do what you want it to do. So here's how the HTTP request node works and what it looks like. So I've set myself up just a simple webhook trigger in order to receive some data. So I'm just going to put this into listen mode, and I'm going to send myself some data to it. So I have a simple body here of just first name, last name, and email address. So if we click out of this, and to the right of this, I'm going to add a HTTP request node, which you will find under the core nodes, and it's this one here called HTTP request. Let's have a look through what you will find in here. So the first option that we've got is the method. And this is the method that we're going to use to either post out or bring in data into our workflow. The options here that you have are delete, which means delete a record, get a record, patch a record, post out to a record, or put, which is to update an existing record that you already have. Underneath this is the URL that you need to send the information to. And I'll give you an example of where you can find this from one particular service, but essentially the service that you are posting to will give you what that URL is. Authentication means that you will need to authenticate with many of these services. We've looked at previous videos about how to create credentials, so you will need the credentials or the right credentials for the service that you are posting to. The next three options will allow you to send query parameters, headers, and body. Query parameters are essentially what will go after the URL. So you may well have seen this written in the past where you have https : / a web address, a question mark, and then things such as param1 equals and param2 equals. If you to send query parameters, they will go after the URL. Headers are the headers that are sent inside of the request that you are either sending or what you're trying to receive. Again, the individual providers or services that you use will tell you, if any, which headers that you need to send. And then body is the body of the request. So if you aren't sending query parameters, then your service provider may well tell you that you need to send your information inside of the body. If you need to send more complex queries, and again the service provider will tell you what you need to send, you can add additional options here on the bottom by clicking on the Add option drop-down. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but I'll put together a simple guide that helps us to understand what these looks like. But essentially the ones that you might use are things like response, if it specifies that you need a text response. Timeout is how long you will allow the request to go on for before it fails. If you need to send lowercase headers, again, the service provider will tell you if you need to do all of these. And if you do need to send them, you just essentially click onto the option that you want to add and set the parameters that are inside. So for example, if I want to set this response to text, I would do it in this way. I don't need this in this particular example, so I'm going to get rid of this one. Now, one of the beauties of this particular node is you have this option in the top right here to import a CURL request. Many of the providers, when they publish their API or connection documentation, will give you examples of what these look like and will allow you to copy a CURL string. And we can paste this into our n8n instance, which will actually build the request for us. And again, I have an example of what that looks like, which I'll share with you in just a little while. The settings tab here at the top will allow you yet again to set more parameters. So for example, if you must force SSL, again, your provider will tell you if that's the case. You can set this to on. Always output data essentially means that you will always get a response, even if the response is empty, that comes back from the provider. Whether you want to execute this once or loop it, and we're going to take a look at loop nodes in a later video, and also whether you want this to retry if your request fails. Then what to do on error. So if it does error, do you want it to stop? Do you want it to continue on to the next node? Or do you want it to continue but use the error output in a future node in your workflow? So we just head back here then to parameters. Now what I'm going to do in this example is to take the data that I've received here from my webhook, and I'm going to post this out to an Airtable that I created. Now I've had a look at this and found that Airtable has published, as many of them are, or have, sorry, their API documentation. And this API documentation is what we need to look at to help us to understand how to make the connection. So in this case, what I want to do is to look down the left-hand side here, where you will find details in this case, such as how to authenticate, scopes, in other words, how you make the general connection. But what I'm looking for now then is the action that I want to take, and my action here is to create a record. You can see that Airtable has been very kind, and they have produced an example request using CURL. I'm going to use this then just to get started, just to give you an example of how this works. So I'm going to copy the CURL string. I'm going to take it back to my n8n instance. I'm going to click onto the import CURL button, and I'm going to paste my command into here and click onto import. And as you can now see, it's set this to post. It's built some of the URL. I need to make some changes in here. It's set my authentication to none. I don't need to send any query parameters. It suggests that I need to send headers. I'm going to change that in a little bit because I already have my credentials predefined. And then it has the body request that I need to send underneath of here. So let's begin to make the right changes to make this work for me. So it suggests here that I need a base ID and a table ID or name. Now I went looking into this a bit deeper with Airtable, and it does actually give me examples for my own personal account here. So it gives me the ID of the base. Now again, you will need to find this in the individual service that you are sending to, but in my case I have this information available. So I'm going to copy the ID of my base, and I'm going to replace it where it says it wants the base ID in here. Paste that in. And this information further down also gives me the table ID that I want to send to. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to paste this here where it says table ID or name. So that's my URL now all completed. Now I'm not going to send my authorization in my header because I have my credentials already saved for Airtable. So I'm going to turn this off. So my authentication here to one of my predefined credential types. It's set as Airtable Personal Access Token in my case. And I have my token account here. There may well be some cases, by the way, where you do have to send your authorization in the header. That will be the case if n8n doesn't have a predefined node for the service that you are trying to post to. But again, the API documentation will normally tell you exactly what parameter and what value you need to add into your header to properly authenticate. Now, in this example, I'm going to copy this because I want to share with you an alternative way of doing this. So under the body content type here, it either allows us to send it as a JSON, as form URL encoded, form data, n8n binary file, or raw. And in most cases, this is going to be JSON, but again, there are examples of times where your provider might tell you that you'd need to send it as form URL coded or as form data. Again, if you select the right option here based on what the service provider is telling you, then you kind of know you're going to get it right. But I know that Airtable expects JSON, and I can actually paste in here the raw JSON, or I could use this option of using field tables below, where I can put in, for example, parameter 1 and value 1. So whatever the parameter and whatever the value it asks you to send, you can place into here, and you can continue to add these. Now I know in my example this probably won't work, as the way that Airtable, for example, expects this is to have a construction of this kind of records and then fields and then the fields underneath of it. If I was to send it just like this, it would send it just simply in a body request. And because it's just a body request, the connection to Airtable would fail. So I need to send this as JSON, and I'm going to paste back in there, which it gave me. You can see this bit here is this part here. Now I don't want this information, because I want to use the information I pulled in from my webhook here, and I want to use this in my example. So I'm going to delete this information here out. I need to change this one from visited, so I'm going to show you my Airtable real quick. So I've got first name, last name, and email address. And what I'm sending to here needs to match these three fields here. So I'm going to change this to first name, last name, and email address. And this needs to be in double quotes as well. So now I've got this. What I now need to do, because I'm going to be dragging in some expressions, I need to change this option from fixed to expression, which will allow me now to drag these in. So as I shared with you in a previous video, all we need to do here then is to begin to drag this information over. So I'm going to grab first name and bring it into the window. And you can see here there's just you barely see it, there's an indicator that moves along with me. So I'm going to pop this indicator bang in the middle of those two double quotes and paste that in. And that will bring in my first name expression. And then I'm going to quickly do the same with last name. And then I'm going to bring over my email address. Just get in the middle of the quotes. There we go. And if I wanted to check that, I can click onto the window here just to check that it's pulled in the right information. So first name, last name, and email address. I'm happy with that. I'm not going to add any additional options in this one just to keep this nice and simple. But now if I test the step, we now get a response back with an ID, created time and field, which means that this has worked. And if I head back to my Airtable, I can now see the information that I've sent in my Airtable as expected. So that's how we do a simple post request. If I head back to the documentation for Airtable's API, you can see here that it's telling me that in order to make that work, I need to send a post request. In some cases, though, it might tell you that you need to send a GET request, or in some cases, a patch or put request. All of the documentation that you will find around APIs will tell you exactly what type of request that you need to make. In this case, if I was to change this to, say, GET, I would need to set the URL that I need to post to. And in this case, you typically don't need to send any information. run the test step, and what that will do is fetch the record. And once you have fetched the record and you get your output here, you can then begin to use that in additional steps to the right of your workflow. So that's just a very quick summary of what the HTTP request node looks like in n8n. I hope you enjoyed this short video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in a video in the very near future. Thanks again.